Well, chronic wasting disease has been in Illinois since 2002. Other states have found it at that time in the Rocky Mountain West. They've had chronic wasting disease since the late 70s, and it currently is occurring over nearly 2/3 of Wyoming and at least half of Colorado. Some areas of Wyoming are looking at nearly 50% infection rates in mule deer. Wisconsin had an outbreak of chronic wasting disease approximately the same time that Illinois did in 2002. Their infection rate has increased from approximately 1% to over 6% currently, and is spread over quite a large area of the state. Some units of Wisconsin is seeing chronic wasting disease rates at 40% in adult males. In Illinois, we have had about the same infection rate approximately since we started at right about 1%. We've seen some spread from initially only in 2 counties, and now is occurring in 14 counties, but overall infection rates are remaining steady. That perception has been widely held by many. Unfortunately, the experience that disease managers or disease biologists in Illinois and in other states does not support that notion. When a CWD outbreak occurs, it tends to show up in a localized area with higher infection levels at the center and reducing infection rates as you move away from that center. And as time has progressed, we've seen a steady expansion from those initial infected areas. That behavior is typical of a newly emerging disease. So the behavior of the disease on the landscape does not suggest that it's been here over and we're just now finding it. Certainly it had been around for some years prior to detection, but it's not something that's been with us forever. And the evidence of disease progression suggests that if left untreated, it will continue to increase its infection levels, potentially reducing deer populations to very low levels and spreading over large portions of the landscape. When CWD first emerges or first appears, it is a low-level disease. It occurs in a limited number of deer, but the experience that we've seen over time in other states is that without management, without some kind of intervention, the disease will increase steadily over the years. Wyoming and Wisconsin have seen the rate of infection increase approximately 20% per year. And that means that the infection will double every 4 to 5 years without some kind of additional management. That doesn't seem like a big deal when you're looking at 1 or 2% infection rates, but if you're looking at 5% infection rates or 10% infection rates, that means that you're going to be up into the 20 to 40 to 60% infection levels within 10 years. When the infection level reaches high levels like that, the ability to address the disease is eliminated. There's really nothing you can do at that point except stand back and watch, as far as we can tell. So our strategy in Illinois is to try and maintain the infection level at a low level so that we're not seeing 20% increases per year, so that we can maintain low levels in hopes to delay the progression of the disease and restrict the expansion across the landscape.
Why don't you do that?
Well, actually we do. When we first started our CWD management program, all hunter quotas permit quotas in CWD counties were raised well above the limit that would be issued in that county. We've also instituted additional hunting seasons in those counties with liberal rules, more liberal than other late winter seasons. The effort of those expansion of the hunting season, the design of that was to try and maximize the amount of recreational hunting harvest that occurs in those areas. And to some extent there has been some increase. Unfortunately, there are limits to the amount of deer that hunters can or will harvest in a particular area due to any number of factors, including the amount of effort that's required, the time that's available, and the desire or need for venison. And those tend to restrict the number of deer that hunters will take ultimately. Also, certain areas, particularly in urban or suburban areas, are simply inaccessible for most hunters, especially when you're looking at gun seasons. So we have tried to maximize hunter harvest, but our experience and the experience of other states would suggest that utilizing recreational hunting as your only disease management tool is not an effective strategy. That is a perception that is completely false. All deer that are culled through DNR efforts are retrieved. We're not perfect, so I'm sure there are a few that get away, but 90 to 95% of all the deer that are shot at are retrieved from those locations. It is in our interest to be able to take those deer back and have them tested for chronic wasting disease. So we take deer to a field laboratory situation where tissues are extracted for research, not only to determine CWD in that particular deer, but also to help understand the dynamics of CWD in the deer population. We take tissues to do DNA work, to look for resistance and within those deer, and there are other studies that are ongoing. All the deer that are shot that are suitable for human consumption are then taken to a processor where the venison is deboned, and when the test results come back, those deer that do not have CWD are then donated to the local food pantry network. Last year, for instance, nearly 30,000 pounds of venison was donated to the Northern Illinois Food Bank, and over the course of the program, over 1 million meals, equivalent of 1 million meals, have been donated through these food pantry networks. Yeah, baiting is a controversial aspect of the CWD management program in Illinois. The culling that's done with agency staff is typically done over bait, and we use the bait to try and increase the efficiency of our removals. It also allows deer activity to be concentrated in areas where deer can be removed safely. And so that's why we use bait. We try to minimize the the ill effects of the bait by monitoring bait sites closely, by removing deer that are utilizing those bait sites, and then we remove the bait as soon as any operation CWD management efforts are ceased, so that this limits the availability of the bait to only those times when deer are being removed. One could argue that the bait has increase the transmission of the disease, but our results argue against that. In areas where the CWD management has been implemented most intensively, we've actually seen CWD infection rates decrease. And this is as a result of the decreased populations that have been a result of the culling. And that reduces infection transmission rates, so the infection had been decreased. So the DNR, the bait that's utilized by DNR does not seep into the soil, and it doesn't have lasting effects at that specific location. And we don't concentrate the bait at specific at a 1 or 2 square foot area. It's scattered over 100 square feet. And then it's removed when the deer shooting is ceased. So you don't have that continued feeding activity at that specific location over extended periods of time. Yeah, that's a perception by many. Actually, the chronic wasting disease management program, the sharpshooting, doesn't begin until after the end of the last recreational hunting season in mid-January. So all of the activity is limited to the winter months from mid-January till the end of March. There have been culling programs instituted in many states. Typically, they're only instituted for a few years and not at the intensity that's necessary or the focus that's necessary to impact chronic wasting disease. The CWD culling that's been ongoing in Illinois has been occurring over the last 12 years, since 2002, and we've been able to demonstrate effects to the local populations where the program has been instituted over a long time. That by reducing those localized densities, transmission rates have been restricted, and in some areas they actually were reduced. So the program can work if it's administered over the long term and at a level that